include the first phase, which involves the formulation, and that is highly taken up by the county executive, led by the Department of Finance. The next phase is approval, where the assembly is involved in looking at the estimates that have been made by the executive, and then after the assembly is approving, then we go into implementation. That is when you start to check whether you have development within your area or not. And finally, after the implementation, you would also want to know, was your money spent prudently? And that is where audit process comes in. The Auditor General will give their view. We also, as the Wananchi, would also look at it on the perspective of social audit, as empowered by the Constitution of Kenya, because we are given the power to look at what the government is doing and also give our views on whether they are doing the right thing. So that is the process. But where are we as a county in terms of budget making process? That question will be answered fully by the county executive, the chief officer for finance, who is here with us, that is William Kurere, and a representative of the Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance. That is the representative, and that is Evans Kibet, who is here with us tonight. So welcome to the broadcast. And before we start, maybe we can start with the introduction of our guests. And I would start from my immediate left. That is Evans from ZGG. Maybe you can introduce yourself, then we can go directly into our conversation tonight.
Thank you, Bwana SK. Good evening, our viewers. First, we thank God for this opportunity. We are here once more to push this agenda of citizens' engagement in the budget process towards accountable, transparent, and prudent budget decisions. So, for those who are seeing me for the first time, I'm Evans Kibet. I've not changed my name. I work for the Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance as a programs officer, and I'm also a budget trainer supporting communities in budget engagement work.
Well, and I think that makes us, or rather that makes the three of us here, myself getting to probe for more about the budget, and you having been engaged in involving the community in understanding the budget making process. To you, Bwana Chief Officer, maybe you can also introduce yourself.
My name is William Kurere. I am the Chief Officer in charge of Budget and Economic Planning, Baringo County. And, I'm happy tonight to be your guest to discuss issues concerning budget. And going straight into the matter, we are discussing the third quarter implementation report. And at the same time, we've just concluded a budget called supplementary budget, which was supplementary budget for 2020-2021.
Yeah.
And again, after successfully completing and having approved, having the document approved of CFSP, which is County Strategy Paper, and now we are at the budget estimates.
Well, you've gone directly to my first question. We are at the budget estimates. And maybe before we go into the processes, you've just said you're the chief officer for, is it economics and planning?
Budget and economic planning.
Yeah, and we understand that the Department of Finance in Baringo County has two chief officers.
Yes.
So what is your role really, before even we go into what we are talking about today? What's your role as a chief officer for budget and plan?
My role is to undertake the budget cycle with the Directorate of Budget.
Yeah.
At the same time, I have a directorate under me called Planning, and Monitoring and Evaluation, and County Investment and County Investment and Resource Mobilization. Those are my roles.
That's your role. Well, and before we go to where we are as a county in terms of budget making, we'd also wish to look at the various important dates that involve budget making process before we go into asking ourselves where are we as a county in terms of budget making process. And beginning of August every year, August 30th, the county CEC gives a circular to every department instructing them to start making their budget estimates, preparing their budget estimates for the following year. And that is the budget that we are talking about, 2021, 2022. And September 1st, the annual development plan should be out and be made public. This guides the budget making process.
Correct.
And this annual development plan is a 1 year extract of the county integrated development plan. That is the CIDP.
Correct.
October 21st, there is a review of previous budget and distribution of resources in the next budget for every sector.
Correct.
So you can see the comparison. Now moving on January the following year, that is January 1st, the Commission on Revenue Allocation should have submitted their recommendation on distribution of equitable share.
Yes.
You know, the CRA allocates every county some money that builds up into the budget for every year for every county. Moving on, 30th of April, we have the county budget estimates being tabled at the county assembly, which I believe it has happened already.
Yes.
And that will also now bring us to where we are as a county in terms of budget making process. Then the public participation process now takes over from May. And there have been a number of conversations even with us as a media with the county assembly on how the public would be involved. So that is what is happening in May. In June, or rather by June 30th of every year, that marks the end of a financial year. That is when the appropriation bill, that budget which is read by the finance CEC or the minister before the parliament, and it is approved by parliament, that will ratify or give the government authority to spend now from July 1st. From October now, that we dive into the audit process. And the first thing that the county government does through the executive, they give their quarterly budget implementation reports. With those reports are then tabled at the assembly. That is on October 31st. That is the first quarter report being tabled. Second quarter report will be tabled every 31st of January every year, and April 30th, that is for the third quarter, and July 31st for the fourth quarter. So to you, the viewer, you've gotten a glimpse of how the budget process goes. Almost every step overlaps with the other. Now to you, Bwana Kurere, where are we in the budget process as a county at the moment?
Like you've just outlined, we are actually, it's after the 30th of April, county budget proposal has been submitted to county assembly. And at the same time, we have also submitted third quarter implementation report for discussion. And at the same time, we had another extra activity, which was actually the supplementary budget for 2020-2021, second supplementary budget. So that's where we are at the moment.
Well, so we are at the second, are you talking of second supplementary budget?
Yes, second supplementary budget.
Now, so we are in May of 2021, and
Yes.
according to the important dates here, it is supposed to be at a public participation level, the public hearing, and it is a role that is played by the county assembly. Maybe to you, Bwana Evans, you've been involved in the budget making process. Do you think that the county government of Baringo is at the correct stage of budget formulation process?
Thanks a lot, Chief. I think has educated us, and SK, you have shared an elaborate budget process. In fact, I was feeling myself doing the usual trainings that we do and the sensitization.
Yeah.
So just to take you back a little bit, there is a very important stage that Chief has mentioned, which is the budget implementation. I want our viewers to know that these budget decisions happen concurrently. We don't do a budget and we don't stop somewhere and start doing a budget. Government has to run. Services have to be delivered. Projects have to be implemented. So even as we think about the budget approval, which we will dive into details, let people know and keep an eye on budget implementation. The chief officer did mention clearly here that they are deliberating the third quarter implementation report. Somebody might ask, why is it important to keep an eye on implementation? These decisions feed into each other. If there are programs that we are feeling that were underfunded, if there are budget lines that we felt like they were not well executed, if there is projects that were not well designed, we need to pick lessons from this budget implementation stage to inform our subsequent decisions. And as an institution, we have really been encouraging learning so that we don't make the same mistakes, do the same things every day and expect different results. There should be a learning curve. Since the onset of devolution, we need to see governments improving how they deliver services. Let nobody forget that government does all this for one reason. I think the question is to what end? Yeah. Government exists to deliver services to the citizens. So the budget implementation stage is ongoing for the financial year 2020-21, and you hear that on the basis of what they are learning, they are doing a supplementary budget just to fix some gaps in this process of implementation. It's something that maybe later we can dive into, because that's a process that the public does not really do, but they don't participate a lot, unlike right now when we are participating in the next budget. So as the county government of Baringo, I think, has been trying to meet these timelines. I must appreciate that even the public is involved. For example, though we'll be discussing that in details, we don't have the program-based budget published, but civil society who have requested for it have gotten copies of it. So we are getting ready to engage the assembly with some level of information. I am certain also, and the chief will confirm, that the budget estimates was tabled in good time, and that gives room the assembly to do their oversight role, and even the involved citizens to look at these budget lines and whether they represent the views of the people.
All right, I think that is elaborate enough. Most of these budget making processes do overlap, and by them overlapping, it means one process would be happening and at the same time is happening. Like at the moment, we are yet to close the financial year, and a number of budgetary allocations that had been done before are continuing to be implemented at the moment. And at the same time, we are involving the public, or rather the assembly is busy involving the public in the making of the next budget of the financial year 2021-2022. And that brings us to how our budget, the budget for Baringo, looks like for the year 2021-2022. How are the estimates like, Bwana Kurere?
Okay, just to highlight, beginning with the resource envelope. Every year, as you had said, there's a policy statement. It gives you certain specific resource envelopes from national government. It is actually our equitable share, and also from partners, development partners. We'll get to know how much we have to budget for. At the same time, our projection for our own source revenue. So in that aspect, we set ceilings through sector working groups. And after the ceilings have been set through sector working group as well as public participation, then we go ahead and prepare estimates. Combining that with the strategy paper, we come up with estimates. At the end of the day, those estimates again have to be subjected to scrutiny through the county assembly process. Then eventually they are approved and becomes the budget for the year.
So how small or how big is our budget for 2021-22?
We are looking at the equitable share, which is enhanced by 1.3 billion this time round. Because last financial year, we had a disadvantage after Senate decision to recommend us to use the estimates of the other year prior to this 2020-2021. By that, we had a shrunken resource by 32 million. And it necessitated this, we call the first supplementary for us to recognize that revenue. And as we speak, going forward, we are looking at a more promising year, where most of the things that had been shelved for some years can be implemented, and new programs can be embraced.
So the equitable share, how much is it? How
We are
much are we
looking at
getting?
6.3 billion.
6.3 billion.
Yes.
And I think what contributes to the budget every year is the equitable share and the revenues that the county government collects from the levies.
Yes.
So how is our revenue collection like? And what would be the total budget estimate for 2021-22?
Looking at our own source revenue, we are actually experiencing some challenges because of the COVID pandemic. Last financial year, we failed to attain by 90 million our revenue target. And that was mainly due to low influx of tourists to our tourist destination in the county. And it has been one of our major contributor to our own source revenue. Again, this financial year, we may not also achieve our targets. Seeing a shortfall of around 150 million, because we had put a target of around 300 million. But in the first quarter, in the first half of the year, we had attained only 90 million for the same reasons, because also with the measures that were put in place to contain the pandemic was suppressing the performance of the entertainment sector. And also, maybe to some small extent, we were not able to collect some revenue from Tiati when those operations were taking place, because there were some security operations that were taking place, and livestock markets were not performing, so we could not collect much.
Well, in light of the challenges that you're facing when it comes to collecting of the revenues, what does that really mean? What would be the impact to the common mwananchi who is expecting services from the government now that you'll be falling short by up to about 150 million in the budget for the coming year's budget?
Normally, the first casualty are the projects, because you will find that when we appropriate, this budget is appropriated maybe into 3 categories: operations and maintenance, there's recurrent, which is actually non-discretional, and development, which is pegged at 30% and above of the total available resource. So in that aspect, sometimes when we fail to collect, we find that some projects will have to be suspended. If we were to implement all projects at a go, we find that we'll not be able to pay because of that shortfall.
Yeah.
But since sometimes implementation may not be 100%, but it is good to acknowledge in paper that if it was to be paid to the last sum, you will still have a shortfall of certain. And for us to maintain a balanced budget throughout the years going into the future without having to commit government on issues, maybe cumulatively, we always take that into consideration. We adjust immediately before we go to the next financial year. We do a review and we adjust for that. So those which would stand suspended, we make it as first charge of the next financial, because those projects cannot be thrown away.
Yeah.
This had undergone public participation and priorities were set, so we can't just throw them outside the window and say we can't implement because of revenue shortfalls. We will always make it first charge before we consider other projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Now, looking at what you've just said, the first casualty is the projects, which
Yes.
means the first casualty is the Mwananchi, because they wouldn't
Yes.
get services
Yes.
as they expect.
As they expect.
And it is in the backdrop of a pandemic, something that not anyone could control,
Yes.
and with nobody really, even governments cannot control. But I'm sure there are strategies that you're putting in place to cushion that. But before we go into that, to you, Evans, the CEO is saying that the first casualty is the Mwananchi. You've been involving the Mwananchi in the budgeting making process. You've been helping to build their capacity when it comes to engaging the government, getting involved in the budget making process, and also ensuring that their views are captured in the entire process of budgeting, be it giving their views on what project to be prioritized, be it giving their views on whether the money is spent prudently by doing social auditing. You've done quite a number of social audit processes with your budget champions, and also the community-based organizations in the county, the civil societies as well. So what did you find out within the period of COVID pandemic, and what do you think, how adverse would the effects be to the common Mwananchi who's expecting service delivery? And here we've just been told the first casualty is Mwananchi and their projects.
Yeah, I think the chief officer has been honest enough to tell us that even though we are discussing a budget as big as 7.3 billion, there could be anticipated challenges in revenue as we progress. This is not something new, because the pandemic came midway of the financial year 2019-20. So what I would emphasize is that as the assembly looks into the budget, let them ask themselves difficult questions. Is this revenue projected realistic? And if you want to tell whether it's realistic, you have to moderate previous performance versus how the potential of the county to grow. So, for example, let me just take you back to what the chief has said, the local revenue. Then I'll come back to equitable share. The county was on a very good trajectory. I think there's a time we reached around 359 billion. I think that's the highest we have gone, around 360 billion, 360 million.
360 million, yes.
Million. And at that point, we felt, in fact, there's a time we were congratulated and even given some additional resources under the fiscal responsibility in the CRA formula because of very great improvement. So maybe we need to go back there and say, if we had reached 359 million, and here is the pandemic is here, what are those things that we need to cushion so that even as we face the pandemic, they are not affected as so much. Yeah, as I think the counties have had conversations. There is if you are not aware, there is the Council of Governors had a summit, if you can remember, and they prepared what is known as counties COVID-19 socioeconomic recovery strategy. And among those strategies is how do we cushion revenue collection. So a projection of 258 million for this financial year, I think you just need some quick mathematics to see whether is it realistic? Is it, because if for example in 2020-21 we were targeting 346 million, and so far we have raised 90 million as per the first half. Just to take you back to our mathematics class, in the first half of 2019-20, the county had raised 174 million. So because we have to compare two similar periods. So because 2019-20 first half and 2020-21 first half are similar periods. Yeah. So we are doing 50% of what we did previous year. Yet we are saying the county revenue had been growing. So there is a big problem there. Just to even now start thinking about solutions, let's not dwell a lot about problems. Yeah. As the assembly deliberates this budget, they need to ask the question, is the county treasury leading us in the right direction in terms of thinking, how do we boost our revenue even in the midst of pandemic? I'm so concerned about one thing that I've seen the county treasury does. the construction of the border sheds has become a traditional way of cushioning, of promoting revenue. There are so many other things that could be done. I think if conversations are taken into public participation, and I'm happy that this year people were asked during the county fiscal strategy paper to map out revenue sources that they felt the county had not tapped into. So how I wish we could go back to that report. It's unfortunate that we don't have the public participation report attached to these budget estimates. There are people, as much as we are recipients of services, we can also support this government in terms of ideas. The citizens, the mwananchi down there, the budget champions, the stakeholders in the markets, the Wanjikus and everyone. So we need to go back to that public participation report and open up a stakeholder conversation. We know there is a very big issue of land valuation in Baringo. We are still using a valuation role that dates back to 20 years ago. And the value of land is fast appreciating. So is it time that we have this candid conversation with the landowners and say, I think for us to get services from this county, let's be honest enough and give Caesar what belongs to him so that we get as much services as we need. So that's for local revenue. Me feels that the 258 million is still very low, but it's a good thing to manage yourself. If we open this conversation, we can go even back to our 300 million. If you go to, I think there is somebody, there is an office, an institution, if I'll remember, I'll tell you later, that projected revenue, did an analysis of revenue potential of Baringo. And it had projected it over 1 billion, that we can raise over 1 billion if we are serious. So, and we are still dancing at about 30% of that. So I think we need a conversation around that. This thing of border shades. And you know, I'm sorry to quote that because SK, you travel along Nakuru, Marigat Road. There's a border shade at Kapchelukun, just to refresh your memory. That border shade is hardly used by the intended user. What does that tell you? I'm not trying to mock the government, but just ask ourselves difficult questions. Was the border operator involved?
Was it even necessary?
Was he involved? Because maybe there are other services that they could have been given to enhance their revenue production. On the equitable share, I am happy that Baringo County government is pegging the equitable share on the formula, the bill, the county allocation of revenue bill, as you said. Once the formula is tabled on 1st January, it is followed by a bill which should be tabled alongside the budget policy statement. And that bill has given us, has proposed 6.3 billion as equitable share to come to Baringo. So using that for budgeting is a good step, because it's almost certain. Though you know what happens during implementation, we know the challenges of cash flow, which we shall be discussing later. On conditional grants, you must appreciate, and to sensitize the viewers, is that as much as the Baringo equitable share is enhanced, the bill and the third basis formula has collapsed most of the conditional grants and enhanced the figure into the equitable share. So we'll no longer have the conditional grant to polytechnics. We'll no longer have the conditional grant that we had challenges with the assembly last time, the road levy and maintenance fee. We no longer have the user fee forgone. So that creates a situation where that we have to plan so well for these 6.3 billion. Because if there are facilities that were so certain of the user fee forgone, then we need to have very certain budgeting for that financial year. Another concern that I think you'll ask the chief officer is the allocation, the proportional allocations to the economic classification of the budget, the salaries. We are talking about salaries of around 3.4 billion. That is the estimation. It's growing. It's growing every year. I think we'll have a discussion of that. And then the casualty of these processes, the operations and maintenance budget, which now stands at around 1.4 billion, and the development budget at 2.4 billion. You know, we are talking about an estimate. So going back to the actual expenditure, it was in 2019-20, we spent 3.2. Now we are projecting to spend 3.4. There is something there. This 3.4 during implementation, chances are very high it can go high. So we need to really discuss this. How do we as stakeholders support the government to manage this problem of rising wage bill? Because he said that the development budget has to remain over 30%. Now we are remaining with about 19% for operations and maintenance, which we shall discuss. So how big the budget is, we should not be excited. We should just interrogate. And I ask the Assembly to ask the most difficult questions they can ask so that when we approve this budget, it becomes more predictable and more credible.
Well, quite a number of things that you've touched on, and I think even as we move on with the conversation, you would be able to, will be able to get the details and the numbers from the rightful person who is here with us, that is Kurere, who is the Chief Officer for Planning, or rather at the Department of Finance and Economic Planning. And back to the bit of the percentages on what goes to development and what goes to the operations or even payment of salaries. So there's the expenditure bit, and there is the one percentage that should not go below 30%, as you had mentioned. With the constraints that you said there's a difficulty in raising the funding for this budget. How have you decided that what goes to the Department of Finance, what goes to the Department of Health, and what rationale have you used so that there is equitable sharing again at the sub-counties and even the entire county level? Maybe you can touch on that. Then you would also help us understand whether we would be able to achieve at least a 35%, or rather at least a 30% development portion to the development side of the budget, or we would be falling short, and what strategies are you putting to save on that?
Well, maybe just to begin from what is just concluded, that we may not be doing good when it comes to revenue, on-source revenue collection. However, that issue of border shared, it could be one of the issue of raising revenue, but it is not the only thing that Baringo is doing. We have a lot of things. We have mega things more than that. When you talk of agri-based related industries that are coming up, when you, like for example, you know of Katimo Coffee Mill, it stands to boost general economy, especially when it comes to coffee, performance of coffee. Maybe the price index will rise, and also the volumes that will be coming from Baringo County will also rise with the price index. Again, we have the abattoir at the Maui.
Is it ready?
It's coming up seriously, because I think you're coming from the same region, Mr. SK. You can appreciate what that massive structure that is coming up, and the equipments are on their way. So when that will be also implemented, it is a way of raising revenue, because you have a market for farmers, and people will always be engaged in that activity, knowing that there's market. Another one that will be going to the dailies soon for tendering is the milk plant at Ravine. That one also stands to benefit the farmers. In the process, also the government will benefit from certain levies that they will get there.
So what I'm getting from you is the government is putting quite a number of strategies to raise the
on-source revenue.
And even from us as the private sector, we still believe Baringo has a lot to raise from, it could be tourism and any other business that is running within the county. And I'm happy that the community, or rather the public, was involved in asking which sectors may we be falling short of, or we may not be taking advantage the most in terms of raising the revenue.
And another is because there are also levies that are charged, and people collect them. Maybe they are not adequately placed where they're supposed to be. And since this government the current administration came into place, they've never had an opportunity to intervene and maybe place those people in the right places. When you talk of revenue collectors, when you talk of department like agriculture, being empowered to monitor all the slaughterhouses, collect revenue back to government. Because there was that perception that government had overemployed. And that perception that we are calling overemployment is actually also hampering and also hindering us from collecting what is potential for us. Yeah. Because when you look at only just figures based on equitable share, you fail to see opportunity to raise own source revenue through human resource placement where it's supposed to be. So that's one of the strategies of current administration, to assess essential skills that are required to collect revenue back to government. And with that, it will improve even the ratios further, because when you have an increased collection, it decimate the one that has been screaming, which is actually the labor cost. Yeah. Because if you peg it, only just say, oh, the labor cost is so high, let's not do it. You are also denying Baringo County chance to grow their own source revenue.
Well, on that note, the County Assembly was recommending that the executive should allocate at least 25% on operations and maintenance, which I believe that also goes into the capacity building of the people who are collecting revenue. Is that right?
Operation, yeah. There is this aspect of recurrent expenditure, which is labor but when you talk of operation and maintenance, it is that amount that is required to mobilize all the agencies of government to deliver services to wananchi. Like when you talk of fuel, machine maintenances, vehicle maintenance, and running bureaucracies of government, which is also very important. And this amount has always, it was with what we call austerity measures that were put in place across governments. It reduced it from around 16% to 14%. And you realize that with that, it has a correlation with service delivery. You realize that budgets are being rolled over because of the capacity that is at the disposal of government to implement projects. You'll find that, okay, you are sticking to 30 or 40% allocation to development. But the thing that should be oiling systems to move and actually turn that money into service is the one that is being diminished. But with this prudence that we are saying, okay, we've tried to live within the means, in as much as possible, we try to live within that means. But it is a tight shoe. So if there is it can be taken back to where it was, especially in 2018, you can even see 2018, 2019, 2020. We even surpassed all other years in budget absorption, because the O&M that was available then could make sure that you take contractors and go and inspect even all the way to TRT.
Well, I'm not sure how reflective that is on the ground, because there's been a huge outcry that projects are quite slow in Baringo County, implementation is quite slow. And you've said maybe the issue could be about the facilitation of the technical persons who are supposed to implement this project.
The record is very clear. When you go back, he has figures. You are free to check. In 2020, actually 2020, our performance went to as high as 52%.
Na mbona watu haoni hivi?
Okay, that is perception.
Is it that we refuse to see the development that is happening around us? Or?
It's been around, and you can choose to augment something like what you were saying. You want to see that people are only constructing border sheds alone. That's the perception. But you fail to see an upcoming milk plant, an upcoming Yeah. So the same perception, you can actually choose to be insomniac in some way.
Well, so to you, the viewer, you've heard that maybe your perception is different from what the government is doing. Maybe from the comment section, feel free also to give your feedback. Maybe there's a project that you think that you'd want the chief officer to touch on regarding whether it is about perception or it is about really the actual implementation of the project. Drop your question or your concern on the comment section. I can see quite a number of people giving their thoughts, and maybe I can acknowledge a few of them before we take a break. Then we come back to speed up into finishing up the conversation. Then also continue to invite the questions. So if you're watching, let's know where you're watching us from and what you think about this conversation. I can see Vincent Tanui. I don't know where you're watching from, but you're already asking whether we have an equalization fund. You've said we've focused on revenue sources like the funding, the equitable share that we get from the government, but do we have an equalization fund? I can see Ruto, Stephen, you're saying it's the best way to go when it comes to informing the citizens. Thank you. Amos Bulus Chesaina, you're saying the boda shade is good, not only to the boda people, but for everyone. Kwanza when you are light from a matatu and it is raining. So that is on a personal perspective. The other day, there is a gentleman who took a picture of a boda shade with a cow sleeping under it. And someone was asking, is it really working for the people? Or is it benefiting the community? Was it even prudent in setting it up? Joshua Keitany, who's watching from the UK, you're saying, put this to the panelists. As a person who has seen other models of public participation, is it possible for those concerned within the county to involve those of us who would rather share their opinions and contributions through an online platform? Secondly, as a service economy, I think we need to consider setting a formal platform or an office that is recognized to deal with exporting services out of the country. I think him speaking on the perspective of a developed economy like the UK, he could be having a perspective that he needs to share with the county government. Maybe at a later stage we'll get to respond to that. Michael Ngetich, you are saying it is true what Amos Chesaina has said. The shade is of great importance to the users. Perception, maybe. And how you feel when you're sitting under it. Theophilus, you're saying the county is asking its citizens to assist in finding new untapped sources of revenue to raise the revenue. Does it mean that the county government of Baringo do not have strategists, or is it a way of strengthening the people's involvement? I think that we will also respond to that. Joshua, someone is responding to Joshua's opinion, so it's a conversation. It's good to see people are engaging. So should you have a comment, a thought, you can drop it on the comment section, and we will be able to respond to you as we move by. Before we move on to the break, over the last 3 years, the county government of Baringo has performed quite poorly regarding budget implementation, and that's something that came out strongly from the lead, or rather the programs officer who's representing said GG. And we are looking at on the perspective of rollovers and absorption rates. So in 2017-18, the absorption rate was at 94%, 100% recurrent and 23% development. So in 2017-18, we didn't hit the constitutionally required target of at least 30%. 2018-2019, we were at 68%. It dropped from 94% to 68%, with an absorption rate, or rather with the recurrent budget going to at 92% and development 32%. So we surpassed in 2018-19. In 2018, sorry, 1920. that is 1920, the absorption was at 75%. And the operations as usual was at 94%, and recurrent development budget was at 49%.
Correct.
I think I'm not getting the figures there, but what you will notice there is there's a lapse. The county government is not absorbing as much.
If you have to interpret Mr. SK,
Yeah.
that thing correctly, look at the absorption rate for development.
Yeah.
It has been rising. At some point, it was at 32. And then before the pandemic, it had gone up almost up to 50%.
That is 49, I can see.
49.
Yes.
So that is actually where you should be looking at. But if you look at the O&M, there was a austerity measure from 2018, I think, 2018, to reduce the O&M.
And was this affecting all the county
Across
governments?
all counties, across,
Government agencies?
yes.
Can you say something about
Yeah.
O&M?
You have something to
Yeah,
say?
I think things SK and the chief officer has really elaborated. First, I need to have a comeback on the border schedule. Otherwise, people will stone me. What I was just joking our thinking. Like, we need to think broadly. They are good because when they started, they were proposed by the people, the users.
Yeah.
But over time, I think we need to go back to the users and ask what more can be done for the border people. And he has elaborated other sectors that we could delve into, invest in, to raise revenue.
No, you need not to worry. You won't be stoned because
No. I thought somebody mistook my point.
Anyone who is sheltering on it doesn't pay any revenue. It's only the
Anyway,
border
so I
part
think
that
the
does.
point is that we need to think broadly
Yeah.
in terms of our revenue generation strategies.
Yeah.
And for the Ophilas who has asked whether in asking citizens is a lack of strategy, I think is a good thing to ask citizens. Because where the government sits, there are things they don't see.
Yeah.
Even if we talk about revenue leakage, who is this who sees every day the cess, the lorry is carrying goods without paying cess, and so on and so forth. It's the citizen who uses the road, that road, you know. So it's good to ask citizens which areas do we need to tighten in terms of our local revenue, which new sources do we need to tap into. And again, I will ask the chief officer to respond to this. Where is the public participation? I'm really keen because I was so excited when I saw that question in the CFSP public participation. What did people say about our revenue? Which sources are we not tapping into? On the question of O&M, I think let's get this clearly. There is a ceiling for salaries. Let me call it salaries bluntly. That has been provided in the PFM Act, which is 35% of the revenue that we collect, or whether it's local revenue or equitable share, and 35% of our budget. There was a reason to that, so that the development budget remains at about 30% that has been provided minimum. So you can do your math. If salaries have been put at 35% and development has been put at 30%, what should go into operations and maintenance is the remainder. And maybe people are asking why we're discussing O&M. If we don't have operations and maintenance budget, that's where drugs and non-pharmaceuticals are. If there's shortage of that budget, then you will not find drugs in the facilities at some point. That is the money that is used to repair projects, be it borehole, be it water, cattle dips, and so on.
Correct.
It's the same money that facilitates government officers to offer services. You know, sometimes we think that's just that when government is moving around, they are just consuming. It will be a disaster to have government officials seated in the office, not moving development budget, not implementing development programs, and not providing services. And we have seen that happen. I think the chief will comment to this, that at some point we have had challenges in terms of shortage of the O&M budget. And there is a bigger problem when there is rollover. Let me explain this. The money that was supposed to be used to implement this budget has been spent long time ago. The time that the officer was supposed to spend, if it's a project that was identified in 2017-18, that person was paid salary then. The vehicles were fueled then. Now we are estimating to spend 2.4 billion with 1.4 billion. But we know very well that given the pandemic and the issues that the chief officer has raised, we still have rollover. So what happens? We have a very big development budget and then a small facilitation. Let me call it facilitation budget, and
Now,
that's a disaster in terms of governance.
on the same O&M, let me take you back, and maybe this will go to both of you. We are looking at a rollover of about over a billion in 2020, 2021 in the budget, or rather the financial year that is about to end in June of this year. You're talking about operations and maintenance being a factor to service delivery. Looking at it on that perspective, does it mean that hii pia inachangia to the rollover? And if it is adding on to the rollover, what is the relationship between this and the payments of contractors who are even complaining at the moment? The other day we saw them writing a letter to the Corruption Commission complaining of so many things, among them delayed payments. Any relationship on that, and how do you view it? And maybe Kurere, you would also look at how are you dealing with that, and how are you working on reducing this rollover?
Maybe just to answer you, it is not maybe prudent to judge government in one specific window, because things span across a year or mid-term. When you talk of procurement issues, maybe contractors complaining about this or that, it is also, you take it in one step that we've been rated as one of the counties that are good to do business with. So in as much as people are, one person or two people are alluded, but when you go back and look at real statistics, they rate us very highly that it is one of the counties that is good to do business with, because there were no pending bills. And that's why at some point, as other counties were struggling to get money from national government, because it was a condition that if you've got pending bills, deal with that fast, as fast charge. And we didn't get a problem ourselves.
Well,
so in these aspects where people are saying now, it's the same county government that you've been doing good business with. And then one day you wake up and say, this government is no longer doing good business. It must be justified.
Well, let's move to Evans. He's saying that we are one of the best counties to do business with. What is the voice? What are the voices of the people saying on the ground when you engage them during this budget making process? Do they feel the slow pace in even paying contractors? And in your view, what has been the overall impact of these rollovers that we are experiencing year in, year out?
Thank you. I think in terms of the citizenry, I think the bigger concern for the citizenry is service delivery. And when they go to public participation, they go with a lot of hope that we are doing this dispensary in location X in maybe Silale center, so that we don't have to walk for over 10 kilometers in search of a dispensary. So they might not so much interact with the procurement processes and also the bureaucracies that come with it. But for them is that what they want to see is that that facility is operationalized and services are provided at proximate distance. So what I would say is that maybe let's not dwell into the problem. The chief officer has talked about budget absorption improving for the development from about 30-something% to around 50%. What I know, we have had this conversation previously, even with the Department of Water. We asked the question, what is it that we did well that made us to improve? And I think we should have caught up there and move on, implement the best practices, the good practices, the promising practices. And one of it, and let's not shy about that, is the allocations to operations and maintenance to facilitate these officers to implement these programs in an efficient way. And the assembly in their wisdom, and I call on them again if some of them are watching, is to ask this question: why is this O&M budget not getting to 25? I know it's a very difficult question, but we need to see effort from the part of the executive towards accountability to improve this budget line so that the officers are facilitated to offer services. The second issue that came out strongly during our conversation in the water sector, for example, is adequacy of allocation to individual projects. And what we did as an organization, even to support the water sector, is we did develop a cost reference for water projects, where we said, for you to do a borehole, if you can remember that conversation, in Eldama Ravine, what does it take? From beginning to even offering of services. You know, a borehole is not just a borehole. It's when it gets, when it delivers the clean water in approximate distance. So adequacy of allocation. And if you look at this budget, I must say that the lessons have been applied, but not fully. So I'll ask citizens to be the jury. When you engage the assembly, let's look at the budget estimate that has been presented. Is every project adequately funded to ensure that it's completed within the stipulated time? So if there are still boreholes that are allocated 1 million, 1.5 million, 2.2 million, I think there is a problem there. And this is a problem that we all own. I will not only put it on the executive. Correct. Because when you go to public participation, do we have deliberations to the extent that we say, let's address the most pressing need and let's fund it adequately. But if we go to public participation to share money, we'll still have the problem of inadequate allocations. So what I would say, if we stick on saying the rollover is increasing, we will not have solutions. Okay. Let's discuss what is it that and the chief officer will even tell us again, what is it that they did in 2019-20, so that we can expect in 2020-21, maybe the development budget will rise even to 70% absorption.
Well, you've heard from the expert himself who works with the community to empower them in public participation or other engagement of the community and the Mwananchi on budget making process. So you have a responsibility as the Mwananchi to give your views also, and also ask the hard questions to the officers who are sent to the ground when they're engaging you. And I think in the next 1-2 weeks, the County Assembly will be engaging the public on their views on the budget estimates for 2020, 2021, 2022 budget making process. So give your views and also try and ensure that you get all that you need to be answered. And we should be able to really see the absorption rate go up and also get to feel development on the ground and not to have the perception, as we say. We are going on into a break, or rather we are going on to a break. And before we go to, or rather when we come back, we will be looking at how transparent is the county government of Baringo when it comes to the budget making process. Do they avail the requisite documents? You heard that the annual development budget, or rather the annual development plan, is extracted and it is used to make estimates for every year on the budget. Is it available to you? It is extracted from the CIDP. Do you have the CIDP? The County Integrated Development Plan. Do you have it? And if you have it, how did you get it? So that transparency is what we'll be looking at. We'll also be looking at the equitable distribution of resources within the constituencies or the sub-counties. Tiati, for example, may be having a serious challenge of water. And a sub-county like Eldama Ravine, where we are hosted here, could have a higher percentage of access to clean water. What is the county government doing to ensure that there is equity in development? Our time has really gone, so we go on to a break. Then when we come back, we look at those 3 aspects of our conversation. See you after the break. watching the broadcast. I can see the numbers of the people that we had before the break and after the break. There is not much a difference. So thank you for holding on. As we come back, the first thing that we would look at is the equitable distribution of resources within the county. If you listen to an MCA from Tiaty, they would say they are disadvantaged. And for sure, you would see the disparities. For an example that I've just given, the Department of Water. The access to clean water to a given school, we can use a school, for example, comparing two sub-counties like Eldama Ravine and Tiaty, you would see as a huge disparity. So to the chief officer, how are you, amid the challenges of raising the revenues and funding the budget, how would the county government be managing such disparities when it comes to development and also raising access to, for example, clean water and any other service among the sub-counties?
Well, before maybe I answer you, there is a catching up to do, especially in Baringo, because we were one of those marginalized counties, even when we were under national government projects. And by the time we came to the new dispensation of county government, also within Baringo, they had disparities. There are regions which had gone ahead, and also when they were doing representations per sub-county, you'd find that other sub-counties are more represented, others are not. But when we went and say, now let's share revenue based on the ward, that would be the one of the determining factor of sharing revenue. You find also Tiaty may be advantage because they have the highest number of wards in the county. However, the expanse of that region, I think is almost 60% of Baringo is in Tiaty.
Yeah.
So with the same resource envelope, you want to cover everybody, but the blanket is half. So as we go into future, using that revenue, because it's an equalizer, when you allocate money to every ward, it's one of the equalizer. Again, when it comes to flagship projects, flagship projects that support activities in various regions get funded. When you look at Tiaty, flagship projects that goes to livestock development, they get their lion's share. You find even the conditional grants goes to that direction because of the activity that they engaged in. When it comes to urbanization, there are those regions like Kabarnet that they are benefiting from funds that are targeting urbanization. So it may not be equal, but it is equitable that funds for urbanization go to such regions, and so on and so on. Those are the things that sometimes we put into consideration when we're coming up with the flagship project programs, at the same time ward-based programs. So Baringo, I think so far, is still missing in the equalization fund. Yet we, when you ask or you survey, you will find that Baringo feel that they should have been considered with equalization fund on top of equitable share. So that is where we are.
Well, that is on equalization, or rather equitable sharing of resources among the sub-counties. In your findings while engaging the community, Bwana Evans, how is the situation like? And how dire is it? Is there hope? He has explained about the strategies that they have put in place to ensure that there is equitable distribution of resources across the sub-counties. How is the situation like? And would this be fixed based on how much the county is trying to distribute resources?
Well, Boneske, I think we must appreciate that some of these problems are a creation of previous regimes, and also the geographical conditions, the climatic conditions, and so on of the county as a whole. You know, we have the highland parts, we have the lowland parts in this county, and the climate is not favorable in some places with regards to some services that we are talking about. But I must appreciate that there is a level of recognition. I must say that, because we have held conversations, and I guess it even has been covered by Baringo News on issues equity. And the county government, led by His Excellency the Governor, committed that moving forward we will be more alert, we will be more conscious with the fact that we are not equal when it comes to development. And some people might ask, why is ZGG and budget champions and the civil society so concerned about equitable? I believe I'm one of the strongest believers that you cannot develop if your brother has not developed. Even if you studied, those who have studied economic development, it's measured by Human Development Index, and access to those basic services is a key factor. So even if we have, for example, that's why we talk about disparities in the country. Even if we have 1 million rich people and we have 47 million poor people, there's no day we will be considered as developed. So when it comes to Baringo County, I've seen effort. First, the people, there is a level of appreciation that we need to start thinking of how we share resources. As to whether we are moving towards that direction, I'll discuss that shortly. But then there is still a serious problem when it comes to, let's talk about health and water. Let's start with water. We have had devolution for about, we started in 2010. The county government was established in 2013? How many years now? About 7 to 8 years. But the census report, which is the most recent, 2019, still shows very wide disparities, very disturbing inequalities. How can we have one sub-county having about 10% of its residents accessing improved sources of water, while another sub-county having about 70%? I think that's something that we should make us not sleep. And start thinking deeply, how do we, and that's why we still have the perennial problems that we see, which I don't want to discuss because that's a discussion for another day. The perennial problems known in Baringo. The health sector, you've seen when malaria hits in Baringo, where does it go? How is our response? How is Eldama Ravine prepared to respond as compared to Tiati, Baringo South, Baringo North, Mogotio? I think those are discussions we need to have. And in terms of progress that we have made, allow me to enumerate what I've seen the county do, and I must appreciate them. One is the drilling rig. Allow me to discuss that. I think that was the spirit behind purchase of a drilling rig was the fact that we need to fast track drilling of boreholes so that as many people as possible have access to water. Now what needs to come in is the operationalization. What formula are we using to operationalize? I'm still seeing some wards expecting the rig to start with their ward, yet they are better. I'm not saying they have the best access, but they are better placed compared to others. I checked the wards which had put money for. There are some who have already anticipated that the drilling rig will come. They have put some small monies for fuel for the rig and other factors. So the county Department of Water, and I hope they are listening, at the chief here will speak to them. We need a policy on management of that rig and a formula on how equitable it's going to be operationalized. We need to see a deliberate move to start with the locations with low access, even as we move to other locations. Then the question of repair of water projects, I'll just stick to those two. We have seen this time around there is about 10 million for repair of some projects that had broken down. That's a good thing because we have hundreds, in fact even over 200 water projects, and mostly in those water scarce regions that have broken down. Unfortunately, the list of projects is not provided. That's an issue of transparency. So which projects are these that will be repaired? I think moving forward, the assembly should ask the question. And I know they are listening. Which are these projects? If the list is not provided, then don't be surprised that it will start with the Chemususu area. Repair of,
which will disadvantage again
those places. So there is progress, but there is some gaps in terms of the mechanism. In terms of the rig, again, I've seen 13 million for operationalization. We need to understand what exactly is going to this 13 million. So in the spirit of budget transparency. In the health sector, I've seen a good progress towards operationalizing health facilities. I think more money should go into that. And that's why I said we need to strengthen the O&M budget, because that is dependent on how strong our O&M budget is. In terms of even in future solving this problem, even as we think about our lobbying to have us included in the equalization fund, and if I'm not wrong, we are now categorized as marginalized, because there are so many locations, I can't remember how many, during the CRA survey in Baringo County that were categorized as water scarce. So the county government needs to have a formula. Even as we fight for the formula at the national level, we need to have a formula. I know the executive had tried to give a semblance of the equitable distribution formula, but then it was shot down in the first regime, the first assembly. We need to have those, they need not to give up. We need to have those attempts and have as much conversation as possible. I know it's an issue of even understanding among the people who are appreciating, not understanding. I know most of these, our MCAs understand, but appreciating why we need to have more resources going to some location for some time, and then we grow them so that they catch up.
Well, you've heard it's about policy, and policy is formulated at the county assembly, right?
It is actually a joint, it's a joint activity between the executive
and the assembly. So it boils down to the leaders that we do have. So should you have your MCA back in your ward and you think that you are running short of, or rather you're feeling that you're lagging behind in access to water or access to health services, then it means you have your leader to come to your rescue. And
Mr. SK, you
have something to add?
Maybe just to add on what he said, it's been very elaborate. In Baringo, when you talk of health and you talk of water, you have almost maybe talked of the top priority. Even when we went to public participation, what was returned back as areas of priority. One is agriculture, followed by water and irrigation, followed by health. So those areas are the ones that maybe wananchi and even the departments feel that those, once it is tackled, it will address some of those inequalities. However, in some areas which had gone ahead, like Kabarnet, they benefit from national government to get a mega dam, and the structure was laid. So they were maybe ahead of the race when it came to water coverage. Then followed by Ravine, maybe Mogocho, that will follow suit. There are also projects which were mooted, because when you talk of water provision, doesn't stop at maybe drilling a borehole. Because some areas, it's impossible even to drill those boreholes. You try, you get a dry well, or you try, you get water that is not suitable for human or maybe animal. And then those areas, there are some mega projects which have been designed and almost implemented by national government. When you talk of Perigay Dam, it is supposed to solve issues around Kericho Valley. When you talk of Amaya Dam, that Amaya multipurpose dam that has been talked about, it is going to solve some issues surrounding the three bordering counties, which is Laikipia, Samburu, and Baringo, where he was about to say something that sometimes this water just bring conflict, which sometimes is not, it's not necessary. If we had planned ahead long time ago to make sure that everybody can be settled wherever he is, and the one factor that moves people from one point to another is in search of water and pasture. So in those interventions will actually maybe accelerate. But whereas we have a drilling rig, it's supposed to intervene in those wards where people have prioritized boreholes and they have been surveyed. It's only that sometimes it's not easy to get the amount. You know, we had said sometimes when you go to public participation, they estimate and give a low figure. because they want to spread thin as much as possible. So we've been trying to discourage that. When they are making those decisions, they should be also making based on some engineer's estimate or something, so that you don't have money laying there without being utilized just because it is fall short of what is required. So that is maybe what I can engage in addition of what my brother has just said.
On flagship projects, I have a small problem with the distribution of flagship projects. The first question to ask, I know it's a difficult question, it's a political question. Who decides where flagship projects goes? I think budget champions gave us feedback wherever they are, and budget champions, anybody who is interested in these budgets.
Correct.
And they ask questions, who is deciding these flagship projects?
Well,
and if I've done a quick analysis, for example, in the water sector, I'll tell our viewers to check and do your math. The flagship projects for the water sector amount to around 72 million. Out of the 72 million, 35 million is spent is planned to be spent in Eldama Ravine. 35 million. Tiati is 0.
it is one of the worst hit areas. Yeah.
Baringo North is around 5 and Baringo Central 5 million. So I know there is a playing catch up with the national government. I know this is the last mile.
Yes.
So very soon we will have everybody in Eldama Ravine, and mind you, I am a son of Eldama Ravine. So I'm not just saying, I'm not trying to incite people against people of Eldama Ravine, but I'm just trying to be conscious about growing Baringo as a whole. So very soon we'll have water at the doorstep of everybody. Very soon. While Tiati, with these mega allocations, will still struggle. The national government, and Chief has really mentioned something that I've liked. We need to have an engagement with the national government. Even then, they started with programs in areas that are have better access. As much as you would say Chemususu would benefit Baringo County, unfortunately, the people in Nairobi, and our MPs need to speak to them sometimes, is that they, for example, one day I engaged the water secretary, and he told me, now you have 2 mega dams. We are doing Kirandich, phase 2, and we are about to complete Chemususu. According to them, these programs are supposed to benefit the entire county.
Which is not true.
Which I don't know what engineering will be done to ensure that water in Chemususu gets to Selale. So the Perkei Dam and the other dam, Amaya Dam, that we are talking about, unfortunately, they have not appeared in the budget so far. He did mention that they are at the design stage. Yes. So why can't we join efforts also and engage in the national budget? And I want to extend an invitation to us. Correct. On Friday this week, we are having a conversation, and we'll ask SK to also air it on the national budget and analysis of the national budget. And even the programs that we are talking about, the problem of slow implementation, you might be surprised that we are only hitting hard the county government, but the national government also have their share of problem. The Chemususu Dam was supposed to have been completed by June 2020. Go to the records of the sector report. But as we speak, we are still talking about completing it maybe in 2022. The Kirandich phase 2 is very slow. There are projects like Saimosoi, water supply, which have not even kicked off. So some of these have been even roadside declarations that have not found place in the budget. So let's join hands, our MPs, our senators, the county government, and now even engage in the National Assembly. They'll be calling for public participation so that we start moving some of these indicators towards what we would want Baringo to be.
Well, I gave you, the two of you, time to really dive on that, because I know it's an emotive issue when it comes to another sub-county is growing faster than the other. It can bring a huge conflict, really. So it was good for the two of you to touch on it, give your thoughts on how much you see on the ground, and also give your thoughts on what the county government is doing to ensure that there is equitable distribution of resources and a speedy development for those that are lagging, so that they can catch up with those that are already ahead of the game in whatever the sector that we are talking about. Now, budget making process gives the Mwananchi an opportunity to give their voice and to be involved in the process at the end of the day. But sometimes we may be lacking the content or the equipment or the requisite documents that we need to be using so that we can do proper audit and proper participation in the budget making process. That boils down to the transparency of the county government when it comes to provision of these relevant documents that are required. Maybe on your screen, you should be able to see how Baringo County government has been performing since 2016 when it comes to budget transparency process. In 2016, I think we were quite low from my document here, which was done by the International Budget Partnership with the title Kenya County Budget Transparency Survey, CBTS of 2020. We are seeing from 2016 we were at 44% when it comes to transparency, and this transparency is gauged based on the county quarterly budget implementation report, which we mentioned that every quarter the county executive gives a report on the implementation. It is also measured using the county integrated development plan. How available is it? Something that I asked at the beginning of the show. Annual development plan, is it available? The county budget review and outlook paper, county fiscal strategy paper, program-based budget, citizen budget, and finance act. How available are they? So 2016 we were at 44%. In 2017 we tried. We were ranked. We scored 78% on transparency as a county, and 60% in 2018. So you notice there's a dropping trend. 2017, 78. 2018, 60. 2019, we were at 57, and then we rose to 64%. And another slide that is on your screen, you would see the performance of the county government in terms of transparency compared to the North Rift counties. So looking at the North Rift counties, we are at number 5 out of 8 North Rift counties. Those are the ones that are within the North Rift economic block. So you can see how Baringo is performing when it comes to transparency. You can see West Pokot is leading, Samburu, followed by Turkana, Elgeyo Marakwet, and Baringo. Then Nandi is at the tail end with 10 out of 100 points of ranking on transparency. Now, that informs my next question. How would you explain the drop, the going up and the going down of the rating of the county government of Baringo when it comes to making available these documents? And if you look at the report here, much of these documents were available on the website of the county government. So this year they are there, next year they are not there. Why?
You can see up to number 5. There's presence at the website. From number 5 to 8, there's an area for improvement. And actually, when I came to the department, this is an area that you'll see an improvement because it's just the documents are there. It's just about loading. So at some point, this is just our administrative. At some point, they were not loading, and we have revisited.
And talking of loading, I think you're referring to the county website.
Yes, to the county
which was
website.
also recently faulted for not having a security SSL kind of. So maybe that could be a wake-up call.
It's a wake-up call
for the ICT, right?
And we call it e-governance. When you go to e-governance, sometimes people do not take it seriously that maybe we value as budget team that these documents be made as available as possible to the citizens. But the e-governance side may not see this as maybe important. Maybe there are other things to update. So we have now an M&D person. We joined the department in the month of September last year, and he has updated all these records. They are ready to go.
So somehow you're saying that sometimes the various departments may not be reading from the same page. So, and that takes us back to a comment that you made some times back. Maybe I can allow me to remind you, kidogo, of something that you wrote some times back, and I would also ask you if you still stand by that. It is a comment, it's a post that you made in 2017. I'm not sure if you had joined the county government by then.
I had not.
That was in November 2017. You said if some people believe that they can tame poor leadership through system controls, but I believe if the head is clueless and plain, the tail will wag in vain. Would that justify what you're trying to say and the capacity that you're saying that you are trying to put things in place? And do you still believe in that as a county government official?
As a county government official,
Yeah.
I still ascribe to leadership theories.
Yeah.
And when I was making that statement, I was a student of strategic planning. And it is it's based on grounded theories.
Yeah.
That an organization is like a living thing.
Yes.
It has a head, it has the stomach, it has the tail. And where the vision and the mission of any organization is placed, is at the head.
Yeah.
Because they see the vision, they see the end before everybody else sees the end, and they translate what they see at the end to everybody in the organization. So if the organ that is assigned that role of setting the vision is not up to the task, all this busy bustle in the organization may amount to nothing, because it could be too much of us towards a direction that you don't even know. And it doesn't apply necessarily to in a particular government or to any particular person. Because we are talking about the system. This is governance.
Yes.
So aspects of good governance should be embraced across, either it's leadership in public sector or private sector. So everybody who is placed in the position, either it's a board of directors, because these are, even based on the agency theory, board of directors are the one who also should be assisting the vision bearer to crystallize this vision and maybe take the people who they are leading to the desired direction.
In a nutshell,
so I still believe
everybody should play their role well.
Yes.
And of course, everybody knows that, or rather, it is public knowledge that government is not an individual.
It's not an individual.
It is made up of quite a number of parts that are moving. And if one part fails to move, then it means it will hamper the progress and the movement of the other. Well,
if you allow, I would want to take us back to budget transparency. I think the chief officer will take us through some courses on strategic management. I think I find he has very good theories there, and that quote is something to reflect on.
Yeah.
So why budget transparency? I think let our viewers be clear on this. Budget transparency is a principle of public finance. And when you talk about public finance, you're talking about money that is raised by members of the public. The budget we are talking about is not a budget for the chief officer, it's not a budget for SK, it's not a budget for Evans. We're talking about a budget for 666,000 residents of Baringo and over. I think the last census said that we are about 666,000.
Yes.
So when we are discussing this, we are discussing all the revenue raised on behalf of the residents of Baringo. Therefore, we need to see how it is being spent. And that's the importance of sharing this budget information.
Exactly.
I'm worried because now we are talking about going into another phase of public participation, where citizens are supposed to give views to the county assembly on these budget estimates. The law, let me just quote the law. I think sorry, I'm not a lawyer, but the law is very clear here. That as any document that is tabled in the county assembly, you can read the PFM regulation of 2015 section 7. Any document that is tabled in the county assembly should be published and publicized
Yeah.
within 7 days after tabling. When was the budget estimate tabled? 30th of April.
Yeah.
How many days are we into that time?
We're almost a month.
And we don't have the budget estimates. I think the chief officer will tell us, maybe as a matter of responding, where do we get this document? It's not, we try to also engage the assembly in the spirit of also ensuring that their processes are open as required by law and they give us. But the originators of the document have not uploaded it on the website. Even you even wonder, is it this document even authentic? Because it has not even been authenticated from the website.
Yes.
But just to go back, and I wish to, so that maybe the chief officer does not maybe be defensive, I must say that there has been improvement. Especially the year 2017, we were leading. I can tell you that for free. You will check the map that is shared every year by the county, the International Budget Partnership.
Yes.
There's a time we were all green because most of the documents were available. And as the chief officer says, one would wonder why would, if you have prepared, you have gone through public participation, why would you not share this information?
Correct.
And I'm so concerned about even the implementation report. We don't want to be bombarded with information about rollover when we could be seeing how this government or our government is faring every quarter in terms of implementation of the budget and even proposing mitigation measures so that these projects move.
Well,
So if you look at the website, we don't have the CFSP, we don't have, and we're discussing, this should be the guide for citizens to engage in this and the assembly to engage. We don't have the program-based budget, we don't have the citizens' budget. There's a time we were leading in this North Rift region, but now we are backtracking. So it's an issue that we should not just brush it over as an issue of e-governance, but an issue of the spirit of the constitution. The reason for government existence is to serve the people, and in doing that, they should do it in a transparent manner.
well, our time has really gone.
Maybe
and-
just to advise, as I had said,
yeah.
platforms vary because you see, if the only area that will be judged
Maybe just 30 seconds.
is on, yeah, if you will judge us based on how much is in the website, yet the document for perusal by any citizen is available even elsewhere. So what we are saying, in as much as you want to rate us, but don't only maybe rate us based on one platform, which is the website. But what I'm promising as the chief officer, budget and economic planning, is that those areas that require improvement, it will go back or even better as it was in 2017.
Well, you've given a promise, and people are watching, and they'll judge you by that.
Correct.
And I would even discourage you from giving us other platforms where we can get them, because I can't travel to Kabarnet to pick a document which can be put on a website, and I download it at my own time. Look at this gentleman, Joshua Keitany, who is in the UK. Would you tell them to have it mailed? No. So I think we can only encourage you to improve and go back to the numbers that, or rather to the rating that we were in 2017. Now, we are approaching the end of our conversation, and I wish we can give, or rather we need to give time to our audience. There's a gentleman, and I'll read out the question, so if you feel it is coming to you directly, then you can note it down. Augustus Chepkurwa, I think he's a resident of Baringo Central, is saying, ask the chief officer why it is that there are no plans to collect revenue from the busy Sesia quarry. So I believe there is a quarry in Sesia. He feels that there are no revenues being collected there. I'm not sure if it is the one which is selling hardcore. I see it along the road when we're traveling to Kabarnet. Then Alvin Bitok, you are saying, ask our CEO the plans the county executive have on mitigating rollovers on projects that are affecting projects. This has greatly affected service delivery to citizens of Baringo County. It sounds like that one you had dealt with, but it is good we have read out the question. And then we have Christine Lebelit, who is among this, or rather is running one of the CSOs in Baringo. She's saying, what it has been eating Baringo people and watering down their efforts is a monster called supplementary budget. The final authority lies on the hands of the county executives and the assembly. Hiyo ni maoni yake, maybe you will respond to that. Next, think of nothing about us without us. Let us think of users like youth, women, and people living with disabilities. Let them also have an opportunity to discuss this absorption rate and the wearer of the shoes. I think she's saying the people on the ground are the ones who are feeling it, and they need to give their views on the issue of rollover. Janet, you're saying achieving equity will remain a major issue unless it is addressed. I think that is a comment on the conversation that we had a few moments ago. Then I'm finalizing on the comments. I see Joshua Kaitan, you're coming in again. You're saying, allow me to diverge a bit on the theory of 2017. I think if systems are allowed to work, then persons overseeing these systems will just be custodians. So he's insisting that there is an issue to do with system operationalization and not just the persons who are running the system. So if the systems are working, then it means whoever is sitting there will just be a custodian of what needs to be done. Purity, I think that's a bit of the conversation we're having. Senator David Ruto, you're saying my family friend Boss Evans, good critique. I agree with you on the current county government. It is a sham. I'm not sure if Evans said that, but that is just a conclusion that you've given. Willie R.O., the diaspora have been sidelined on matters development in Baringo. And diaspora here would mean someone in Nairobi, someone who is in the UK, just like Keitanya and so many other people who are out of the country. Well, I think those are the few that we do have. Maybe we can pick on 2, 3 of them, then we conclude. Time has really gone. So to you, Chief Officer.
To Justus, maybe to answer Justus, we had engaged earlier on, if he was listening, that there are elaborate plans to cover all, to map all the revenue posts, justify deployment of county staff to oversee. And then vis-a-vis what we have just seen, that one of the areas that we are lacking personnel, requisite personnel, is revenue enforcers and revenue collectors. And even the few that we have, we are trying to spread them thin as we engage county assembly to see that we get requisite numbers. And those are the areas that actually in our thinking, if we seal and then increase other areas, and we will find that our revenue will go up and even surpass what we've been having in the past. And then to Alvin, issues of mitigating rollovers means also there's personnel that is involved.
And I think we touched on that. Maybe
yes.
We can also jump to another because of time.
Personnel, and then what we call maybe we hope that this pandemic will go away and we normalize our activities. To Christine, her comment on supplementary budget being a monster that maybe she feels that can be done away with, it's not possible because in every budget year there are emerging issues, and sometimes to recognize additional revenue or to recognize revenue shortfall. So it's something that I cannot do away with. It was part of planning. PWDs, women and youth, they are all taken in consideration because even with these advocacy groups, they do also represent their voices, and they are also included in the arrangements. So maybe those are the ones that maybe okay for diaspora engagement. The way we have just said, when we'll improve our engagement through the platform, digital platform, they will also be able to engage with us.
And
Even during public participation, we will be engaging using a digital platform. Reports they will be getting through the digital platform.
All right, and maybe also to Joshua Kaitan, you can see we are having this conversation courtesy of Baringo News, and as we may not be the government really, but the same government is also trying their best to make good use of this platform. So we also encourage you, the government, to continue using such platforms to engage these people. Without this conversation, I'm not sure if Joshua would have gotten an opportunity to give his views.
We are grateful to that, Mr.
Yeah.
SK.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the platforms that we appreciate. It's a local, but international in itself. We also have Alpha Radio.
Yeah.
We encourage you. You are just our local talents, and we want to support you as a government.
Yeah.
Moving forward as we engage in serving the people.
Thank you for that commitment. And to you, Joshua, we hope to engage you more in more of our programs that are coming on. And maybe to just hint to you, we'll be introducing, we'll have a morning show on a Monday, on every Monday. We'll also have another one on every Friday. And on Wednesday, it will be a moment for the diaspora group now to speak their thoughts. So no one is left out. We are also trying to play our role as a media platform to give you a voice, to you, the public, who would want to give their views and to engage the government of the day. Now, finally,
if I may give a comment on public participation, because I think has been raised by one of our colleagues, Christine. On the supplementary budget, I think Baringo should be a leader in terms of solving this problem of locking out people's views, because we have done a research and we have seen priorities shift during supplementary because of the issues that the chief officers highlighted. This needs to be communicated, and there's need of consultations. So the assembly should provide guidance and even come up with regulations of how to engage citizens in the supplementary budget, because citizens are surprised during public participation when they ask what happened to project X, then they are told it was shelved during supplementary budget. That's so disappointing, because you woke up very early in the morning to go 5 kilometers to a public participation meeting, and then the decision is just turned through midway process. On engaging PWDs and women, I think we need to have a deliberate effort to reach them, especially persons with disability, women and youth. Youth have been coming out. I like the organization that has happened recently, where the youth have formed formed coalitions, and they are engaging on their concerns. But PWDs, I think they still a journey to go. So I would urge the county assembly and the county executive, anytime we are doing a budget, when the youth and women, when PWDs and women come to these public participation meetings, sometimes they are overshadowed by the voices of the majority. And their views sometimes is lost. Because sometimes I see the budget lines to empower women and youth, and I ask, did they really ask them? So even as we think about improving our public participation, one of the area is to ensure inclusivity, so that we have the burdens of raising tax shared equitably, and also the benefits of the taxes that we collect and use should also be shared equitably. On the diaspora, I like it. I like that push, and please proceed and engage the government as much as possible, because COVID-19 pandemic has taught us very important lessons, that we can continue doing what is required of us constitutionally from wherever. We have had Zoom meetings with the county assembly. We have had Facebook Live here, like you have mentioned. We just need to structure it now, building on the lessons that we have learned over time, to structure it in a way that we know who comes into this meeting, and those who are left out, how are they brought on board. But then there is a problem, as you will see in the budget transparency. There is no usually clear information of how public input translated into the final decision. If you look at the budget policy statement, is a good example of how that can be done. They process those issues. When somebody says, I travel for 10 kilometers in search of water, they might not say necessarily I need a borehole, but it's now for government to think, for us to be able to ensure this problem is solved, let's do a borehole. But sometimes that is done, but it's not communicated in the budget documents. So how? Because people will say, we said this. And sometimes you will find the decisions that are arrived finally, because it's a decision-making process. Sometimes they, for one reason or another, they don't reflect what was discussed. So how do we ensure that it's communicated? Because there could be a justification why the department chose to do a borehole and maybe not a water pan, or why we chose to employ a technical officer as opposed to maybe doing project X. So how we process this public input, and that's why we need a public participation report to accompany some of these budget documents.
There is very solid grounds where we include whatever we collect in public participation. I can even give you a summary here. During public participation, the rating was 1% when it came to Public Service Administration and Revolution ICT. The rating for roads, transport, energy, and public works was 34%. So after collecting all those, we translate to the what we call ceilings per department. First of all, that's how we come up with ceilings per department. That the trend that is being set when it comes to flagship project, that is the trend. Then when we come to now what projects, they are the ones to come with priorities, and they rate whether it's big priority should go to health, big priority. After collecting across the county, you realize you find a trend, and we wait. And that's how we come up with.
If we turn that around, how when somebody gives a view and then it's not considered, how is it communicated in the budget document?
Well, I'll cut us short of that because you notice that there's a lot that we need to discuss. And within the 2 hours, we've not even exhausted even a quarter of what we need to exhaust. So that is a wake-up call to us, the media. I'll begin with us, to the county government and to the civil societies, to ensure that we have such conversations as regularly as possible, so that we don't find ourselves in a budget, in the middle of almost passing a budget, and people don't have an idea of what we are about to pass. So I would encourage us really to continue to have more of such conversations, so that we reduce the hassle of not having enough or adequate access to the information that we require, and feeling that there's a shadow that is being casted to the public, yet we've not provided the platform. Well, you've noticed that time has really gone, and we had scheduled for a 1 hour conversation. It's almost like 4 minutes, 5 minutes to the second hour, and we've not even finished what we are talking about. Up and above all, we're still open. We can still provide the platform so that we can talk more about the budget making process. Now, to finalize, maybe as a final word, what would you tell the people of Baringo who are watching us right now, or who will be watching later, regarding the budget making process? What are your final words to these people?
My final words is that let us engage with government whenever you are called upon, so that when we discuss about fairness, justice in resource sharing, it should be actually that and nothing else. It shouldn't be that there's fairness, justice, but it should be that. And we encourage everybody, all sections of our population, to engage in this exercise, because this is how you get your development. Government is about offering service, and we are your servants, and we are here to see that your resources are spent towards giving you the services that you want. So that is what I can say in a nutshell about budget making process.
Well, you've heard, let's engage, and that is the clarion call from the Chief Officer for Finance and Economic Planning. And to you, the representative of SEDGG, who are the sponsors for this show, what do you want to tell the people of Baringo at the moment? I see you've been highly knowledgeable about what we were discussing today. What do you want to tell them?
I think I will urge them to keep engaging, as the Chief Officer said. We are going into another phase of the budget process, that is the approval. We are already into that phase.
Yeah.
So the assembly will soon be calling out for public participation.
Yeah.
Whichever mechanisms they use, let's make the most out of it. And my appeal to every citizen who is watching us, every budget champion, every civil society representative, every stakeholder represented, including those contractors who are saying they are complaining. When we are in this platform, let's deliberate. And I think deliberating is bigger. Let's ask the difficult question of, are we getting the service? Because we have done this over and over again. Yeah. So if it is about prioritizing health sector projects, we have done this with the government for over 7 years, with the county government, with the national government for as long as it existed. So as we progress, are we making value out of this process? And if there are mistakes we have made previously, it's only a wise man who doesn't change his mind. It's only a fool who doesn't change his mind. So let's learn, let's correct where we have done wrongs. Like if there are issues of adequate allocations, let's give adequate allocations. If there are issues of O&M, as we have talked about, let's enhance that budget. If there are issues of equity, let's ensure that the underserved areas, the areas struggling to access basic services, have been addressed. So I would urge all of us to seek this budget. I know we have not exhausted. Do your own analysis. It will only be fair for you to go to a public participation meeting with a document and your view that is informed, as opposed to going to just listen to be talked at. So let's engage.
Well, let's engage. That's the final word from Evans Kibet, who is a representative for ZGG, and from William Kurere, or rather William Kikurere, who is the Chief Officer for Finance and Economic Planning at the County Government of Baringo. Let's engage. Those are their final words. And from us, myself, who has been the host here, I feel I've really learned a lot. If I didn't have this opportunity to sit here and to listen to them, then it means I may not have had an opportunity to really learn from these people. So, and to you who has been watching and whoever would be watching later, it is a challenge to all of us to get to engage the county government in all the platforms that are available, and also get to learn about the budget making process. You notice that every July, or rather June 30th, every county government is required to have, or rather every county assembly is required to have passed the appropriation bill, which authorizes the government to spend from the July tarehe moja up to the end of the financial year of each and every year. That means a document passed without you looking at it means it will have given the government the authority to spend without your approval whatsoever. So should you have an opportunity to engage, please engage, because your voice will give an authority to the government to serve you to the best of their capacity and to prioritize resources and to allocate resources and prioritize projects according to how you give the direction as the Mwananchi. From us, we wish to give thanks to the Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance, who have been with us in supporting, or rather making this program a success, in partnership with the International Budget Partnership, and also the County Government of Baringo for making sure that we have an officer who is informed to tackle the various questions and the concerns that we had as a team here, and also you as the Mwananchi who has been giving your views on the platform through the comment section. And from us and to you, the viewers, we thank you for your time, and we wish you a good time, and until another time, see you again. Thank you.
Have a good evening,
have a good
everyone.
evening.
Thank you.